Have you ever wondered why your heart starts hammering in your chest just thinking about a stressful meeting? Like before it even happens.
Oh, absolutely. Or why you get a literal gut instinct about a complex decision.
Right, a very real physical drop in your stomach that ends up guiding your choices. We casually brush these moments off as just stress or intuition.
Yeah, we do.
But if you pause and really think about it, it is incredibly strange. I mean, we're conditioned to picture the brain as this detached supercomputer, right? Locked away in the dark vault of the skull, doing abstract math and logic.
Right, but your brain is actually physically, intimately wired into the tissue of every organ you possess.
It's wild.
It is, and the profound mystery has always been the exact architecture of that wiring. For centuries, medicine and philosophy have operated on this dualistic assumption.
Like a strict divide.
Exactly. This idea that there's a thinking mind and a fleshy body, and they somehow vaguely influence each other. We could guess at the connections or, study them invasively in animal models.
But mapping the real-time functional network of this mind-body bridge in a living, breathing human.
That was essentially impossible. The anatomical landscape deep in our brains was just too murky to see clearly.
Well, that firewall between the mind and the body has just been demolished. Today, we are looking at a groundbreaking paper in Nature Neuroscience by Jaehi Zhang and colleagues.
And they didn't just theorize about this connection. They built a completely new, ultra-high-resolution map of the human brain's internal prediction engine.
Yeah, by leveraging a massive 7 Tesla fMRI scanner, they mapped the exact anatomical circuits that prove our mental health and our physical health are regulated by the exact same neural real estate.
It's a massive leap forward.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to truly grasp what this map is showing us, we have to rethink the entire purpose of the brain. We have to start with two core mechanisms, allostasis and interoception.
That is the essential starting point, because allostasis completely flips our traditional understanding of biology on its head. Well, most of us grew up learning about homeostasis, this idea that the body reacts to changes to keep its internal state stable. You get cold, you shiver to warm up.
Right. You need energy, you feel hungry, so you eat.
Exactly. Homeostasis is entirely reactive, but allostasis is the realization that if your brain only ever reacted to deficits, you would be dead.
Wow.
Yeah. Allostasis is the brain continuously anticipating the body's energetic needs and preparing to meet them before they ever arise. It is a highly active, predictive process.
So it's not waiting around.
Not at all. Your brain is running a constant forward-looking energy budget.
I've always liked the smart thermostat analogy for this. Like, think of homeostasis like an old reactive thermostat on your wall. It waits until the living room is freezing cold, and only then does it finally kick on the furnace.
And you still end up shivering for 20 minutes while the house warms up.
Exactly. But allostasis is like a smart thermostat wired to the internet. It checks the weather forecast, knows a massive winter storm is hitting at 5 p.m., and starts preheating the house at 3 p.m.
Right, so you never actually feel the cold because the system predicted the energetic demand and adjusted for it in advance.
That is so cool.
It captures the predictive nature perfectly. But for that smart thermostat to work, it cannot just rely on an external weather forecast.
It needs sensors.
Exactly. It needs to know the precise, real-time temperature in every single room of the house. It needs sensors in the walls, the floors, the vents. And in the human body, that continuous sensory feedback loop is called interoception.
Okay, so interoception is the sensing part.
Yes. Interoception is your brain's continuous mapping of the internal milieu. That's the sensory state of your organs, your blood pressure, your glucose levels, your immune system.
So the brain requires this massive influx of interoceptive data to support its allostatic predictions.
Precisely. It updates the budget constantly.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge this framing for a second. If my brain is purely a prediction engine running a tight budget, how does it handle completely random events?
Like what?
Like if I step off a curb and a bus comes flying out of nowhere, my brain couldn't possibly have budgeted for the energy I need to jump backward. How does allostasis account for the unpredictable?
That is the exact right question to ask. And it comes down to how the brain handles what we call prediction errors. Your brain isn't psychic, you know. It predicts based on probabilities and past experiences. When you step off that curb and see the bus, there is a massive, instantaneous mismatch.
Between what it expected and reality.
Exactly. A mismatch between the predicted quiet walk and the interoceptive and sensory reality of a life-threatening emergency. That mismatch is a prediction error.
Ah, okay.
The brain immediately floods the system with arousal chemicals to rapidly update the budget. You jump back, your heart rate skyrockets, your cortisol spikes.
So allostasis isn't about perfectly predicting the future.
No, it is about constantly minimizing prediction errors, so you are as prepared as possible for whatever environment you are navigating.
So, if I'm tracking this correctly, when I feel inexplicably exhausted in the middle of the afternoon, it might not be because I am out of energy right that second.
Right.
It could be because my allostatic engine is predicting an energetic pull, like fighting off a virus it just detected or preparing for an upcoming stressful event. And it's proactively forcing me to conserve energy.
That is a massive paradigm shift, yes.
Yeah.
It changes everything. It means your behaviors, your moods, and your physical sensations are often the result of an invisible, continuous negotiation inside your brain.
That is wild. Okay, we are about 5 minutes into this deep dive, so let's do a quick recap to anchor these concepts.
Good idea.
Bullet point 1. Allostasis is prediction. Interoception is sensing.
Right. And bullet point 2. Together, they constantly regulate the body's systems, updating that energy budget in real time.
Perfect. And here's a question for you, the listener, to think about. Think about a time you felt inexplicably exhausted. Could your brain have been predicting an energetic toll that hadn't even fully hit you yet?
It's a profound thing to consider.
It really is. Okay, so moving on. As you mentioned, knowing this conceptually and actually seeing it happen are two different things.
Very different. For a long time, the incredibly tiny deep brain pathways that calculate this energy budget were effectively invisible to us.
Right, and this brings us to the technological leap that made this paper possible. For years, scientists have used 3 Tesla fMRI scanners to look at the brain. But this team used a 7 Tesla scanner.
Yes, which is a huge upgrade.
To understand why that matters, I think we have to talk about how we observe the brain. Using a 3 Tesla scanner to map deep brain interoception is kind of like trying to listen to a beautiful symphony orchestra from the parking lot outside the concert hall.
That's a great way to put it.
You can hear the loud booming of the timpani, you get the general melody, but the subtle, intricate work of the individual violinist is completely drowned out by the noise of the traffic around you.
I like that analogy because the traffic noise in the brain is very literal. The study utilized this 7 Tesla functional magnetic resonance imaging scanner on 90 participants.
And what does going to 7 Tesla actually do?
The leap from 3 Tesla to 7 Tesla provides an exponentially stronger magnetic field, but they also paired it with a specialized scanning protocol. It's a fast, low-angle excitation echoplanar technique.
That is quite the mouthful.
It is. We usually just abbreviate it as FLEET. This combination gave them a stunning 1.1 millimeter isotropic spatial resolution.
And what exactly does a 1.1 millimeter resolution let us see that we couldn't see from the parking lot?
It lets us see past the physiological noise that ruins the signal in deep brain tissue. Let's take the subgenual anterior cingulate cortex, or SGACC.
Okay.
It's a critical area for mood and visceral regulation, but it is buried deep in the brain, right near major sinus cavities. In older scans, the magnetic susceptibility in that area causes the signal to drop out.
So it just looks like a blurry shadow.
Exactly. Or take the amygdala, our threat detection center. It is constantly obscured by the pulsing noise of adjacent blood veins.
Oh, because the blood is literally pumping right next to it.
Right. And the periaqueductal gray, a tiny structure in the brainstem, is bombarded by the fluid dynamics of the cerebral aqueduct right next to it.
So the 7 Tesla scanner, combined with minimal data smoothing, effectively walks us inside the concert hall.
Yes. The noise from the blood veins and spinal fluid is filtered out, and the delicate, precise neural pathways light up.
But they didn't just put people in a super-powered scanner and take a snapshot, right? They had to prove that the pathways they were seeing were real and not just a fluke of the new technology.
Crucial point. The methodology in this paper relies on something called a bootstrapping strategy.
And understanding this math is crucial to trusting their map.
It is, because even with a 7 Tesla scanner, the signals from the brainstem are incredibly weak. To ensure they were seeing true biological connections and not random noise, they ran a bootstrapping algorithm with 1,000 separate iterations.
What does an iteration look like in this context?
For each iteration, the computer randomly resampled 80% of the 90 participants, so 72 random people at a time. And it looked for reliable blood oxygen level dependent, or BOLD-D, signals.
Okay, so it's like trying to find a hidden rhythm in a crowded room. You listen to a random 80% of the people, find the beat, and then you pick a completely different 80% and listen again.
Exactly.
And if you do that 1,000 times and the exact same rhythm is there every single time, with absolute statistical confidence that the beat is real.
Precisely. They only confirmed a functional connection if it survived a remarkably strict statistical threshold across all those resampled groups.
That is rigorous.
And what's fascinating here is the validation of this method was astounding. When they finalized their map of the human allostatic network, it matched the known physical maps we had from macaque monkeys with over 96% accuracy.
Wait, 96%?
Yes. For decades, scientists had painstakingly traced these physical neural wires in animal models using invasive dyes. But we could only assume humans had the same wiring. This high-definition human data provided the definitive corroborating evidence.
That is just incredible. Okay, we are hitting the 10-minute mark. Time for another mini recap.
Sounds good.
Bullet 1. 7 Tesla fMRI removes the blur from older imaging, revealing hidden structures.
And bullet 2. Bootstrapping algorithms confirm deep human brain connectivity matches animal models almost perfectly.
So here is our second question for you, the listener. Think about this. How much of what we know about human biology is simply limited by the lenses we use to look at it?
It really makes you question established limits.
It really does. So we've established that the brain is a predictive engine constantly balancing an energy budget, and we finally have a 7 Tesla lens powerful enough to see the deep brain wires doing the math.
Now, we have to look at the map itself. We need to trace exactly how a feeling in your gut makes it all the way up to your conscious mind.
Okay, where do we start?
To do that, we have to start deep in the basement of the brain, in the brainstem and midbrain. This is the raw, subconscious survival machinery.
The engine room.
The engine room is an apt mnemonic for this. Down here, we have the viscerosensory motor nuclei complex.
VSM for short.
Right. This includes the nucleus tractus solitarius, or NTS. The NTS is the primary receiving station for the vagus nerve.
So every time your stomach expands or your heart beats or your lungs inflate, that raw sensory data travels up the vagus nerve and hits the NTS.
Exactly. And right next door is the parabrachial nucleus, or PBN, which relays that bodily state upward. And the periaqueductal gray, the PAG, which coordinates primal survival responses like pain modulation and the freezing response.
And we also have the chemical factories down here, right? The paper highlights the monoamine producer.
Yes, these are vital. The dorsal raphe produces serotonin, the ventral tegmental area, or VTA, and the substantia nigra produce dopamine.
And the locus coeruleus.
That one produces noradrenaline. These nuclei don't just process information, they literally pump out the neurotransmitters that bathe the rest of the brain, altering your entire state of arousal and mood based on what the NTS is hearing from your organs.
Okay, so the engine room takes the raw data from the body and sends it upward. Where does it go next?
It moves up into the subcortical regions, the relay and context centers. The mediodorsal thalamus acts as a massive routing station.
Kind of like a switchboard.
Yeah. Then the hypothalamus steps in to regulate hormones and initiate drives like thirst and hunger. The dorsal amygdala assigns emotional salience or threat level to the signals.
And the hippocampus.
The hippocampus provides memory context, asking, have we felt this specific internal sensation before, and was it dangerous?
And finally, those signals reach the outer layers of the brain, the cortex. The study identified the dorsal mid-insula and the dorsal posterior insula as the primary interoceptive cortex.
Yes, this is where those raw signals from the vagus nerve finally blossom into a feeling you can consciously perceive.
And right next to it are the visceromotor areas, regions like the anterior mid-cingulate cortex and the subgenual ACC.
These are the commanders. They take all that sensory data, consult the energy budget, and send motor commands right back down to the organs, telling the heart to beat faster or the stomach to halt digestion.
That is a brilliant summary of the vertical integration of the system. But the paper also revealed something that completely shatters our conventional understanding of how sensory processing works.
Yes, the surprise guests in the network.
They found incredibly robust connections between these visceral internal organ networks and 2 very specific structures, the superior colliculus and the lateral geniculate nucleus, or LGN.
Right.
This is the part of the paper that genuinely stopped me in my tracks, because the LGN is famous for being a visual processing center. It is a primary relay station for the optic nerve.
It is.
What possible reason does a visual processing center have for talking to my internal organs?
It seems entirely counterintuitive until you remember the core mission, allostasis.
Right.
Think about a classic approach or avoidance scenario. You are walking in the woods and you see a shape that looks like a bear.
Mm.
Your visual system, the LGN, is processing that external optical data. But to decide whether to fight or run, your brain needs to integrate that visual data with your internal metabolic state. Do you have the glucose and cardiovascular capacity to sprint away?
Wait, are you saying that what I see is literally altered by how much energy I have?
Precisely. The LGN and the superior colliculus share dense polysynaptic connections with these visceral regulation areas. This is the essence of sensory-motor integration.
That is unbelievable.
Your visual cortex isn't just a passive camera. It is actively consulting your body's energy budget. Studies have actually shown that when people are fatigued or carrying a heavy backpack, they visually perceive a hill as being significantly steeper than when they were fully rested.
Oh, wow.
Your internal bodily signals gate and filter your external sensory sampling. You perceive the world through the lens of your physiological capacity to interact with it.
That is deeply unsettling, but makes perfect evolutionary sense. The visual system is constantly asking the gut, can we afford to deal with what I'm looking at? So we have this massive flow of information from the engine room in the brainstem, through the emotion and memory centers, up into the cortex, and even cross-talking with our visual system. How does the brain keep all of this organized?
How do these disparate regions function as a single, unified prediction engine?
Yeah.
They do it by utilizing the brain's most powerful, wide-scale communication infrastructure. The researchers discovered that the entire allostatic interoceptive system is functionally overlaid onto two universally recognized intrinsic networks.
Which ones?
The default mode network, the DMN, and the salience network.
Wait, the default mode network and the salience network are usually the stars of the show when we talk about high-level human cognition.
They are.
The DMN is what's active when you are daydreaming, reflecting on your sense of self, or contemplating the past and future. And the salience network is what directs your attention, deciding what is important in your environment right now.
Exactly. And these two massive networks meet and share information, what neuroscientists call the rich club hubs.
I love that term. What makes a brain region part of the rich club?
It comes from network theory. In any complex system, a rich club phenomenon occurs when the most highly connected nodes, the hubs, preferentially connect to each other.
So they form an elite backbone of communication.
Right. In this map, the rich club hubs are regions like the posterior cingulate cortex, the isthmus of the cingulate, and the superior and middle frontal gyri.
Oh.
These are cortical areas with massive computing power, and they act as the central switchboard, ensuring global information integration across the entire brain.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because this is where the grand unified theory of this paper really crystallizes. For decades, cognitive science operated under the myth of functional segregation.
That's right.
We believed there was a thinking brain at the top, the prefrontal cortex doing math and writing poetry, and a body brain at the bottom keeping the lungs breathing and the heart beating.
But this 7 Tesla map proves that is a complete illusion.
Yes. The default mode network and the salience network, the exact same neural hardware we use to formulate our sense of identity, feel deep, complex emotions, and make executive decisions, is simultaneously constantly regulating our stomach, our immune system, and our heart rate.
There is no separate mind and body. Cognitive processing and bodily regulation share the exact same neural real estate.
Okay, that brings us to our 15-minute mark. Let's recap this massive realization.
Good call.
Bullet 1, deep brainstem nodes and higher cortical regions talk constantly.
Bullet 2, the rich club forms a communication backbone unifying these signals.
And bullet 3, which is the big one, cognitive and bodily regulation share the exact same neural real estate.
Beautifully summarized.
And here is our final mid-show question for you. When you feel brain fog during an illness, could it be because your thinking network is simply too busy trying to regulate your sick body?
It perfectly explains phenomena that we all experience but rarely understand.
Yeah, like think about the last time you had a severe physical illness, like the flu. You probably tried to sit down and focus on a complex spreadsheet, and you just experienced terrible brain fog.
You couldn't concentrate, your memory was shot, you felt cognitively slow.
And we usually just brush that off as being tired.
But it's not just fatigue. If the default mode network and the salience network are responsible for both complex cognition and allostatic regulation, then when your body is fighting a massive viral infection, those rich club hubs are entirely hijacked.
Their computing power is fully dedicated to negotiating the enormous energetic budget required to run your immune system and elevate your core body temperature.
Exactly. Your thinking network is simply too busy keeping you alive to care about a spreadsheet.
Which perfectly transitions us into the massive clinical implications of this map. If this highly unified, incredibly complex prediction engine is running our entire body and mind simultaneously, what happens when there is a glitch in the software?
What happens when the allostatic network fails to accurately predict our energy needs, or the interoceptive network fails to accurately report the state of the body?
Right. What does that look like?
Well, when a system this fundamental glitches, the fallout is what the researchers call transdiagnostic.
Meaning it doesn't just stay neatly inside one medical category.
Precisely. Because the system bridges the mind and body, a failure in allostasis manifests across wildly different, seemingly unrelated medical diagnoses.
Like what?
For instance, let's look at psychiatric illnesses like severe depression. We often treat depression purely as a mood disorder. But patients with major depression frequently suffer from profound, unexplained physical fatigue, altered pain thresholds, and cardiovascular changes.
So how does this map explain that?
This map suggests depression might be deeply rooted in an allostatic failure. The brain's energy budget is bankrupt, so it enforces a global behavioral shutdown, which we experience as depressive lethargy.
Wow. And we see it in neurodevelopmental conditions too, right? Like autism spectrum disorder.
Yes. Many individuals with autism experience significant sensory processing differences. From the lens of this paper, this could be related to a mismatch in interoceptive prediction errors.
Meaning the predictions don't match the sensory reality.
Right. If the brain's internal model struggles to accurately predict sensory input, everyday environments become overwhelmingly unpredictable and metabolically exhausting.
That makes so much sense. We also see this in neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's.
We do. The default mode network is notoriously one of the first networks to physically degrade in Alzheimer's patients. If the DMN is the allostatic hub, its degradation explains why cognitive decline is so intimately coupled with a massive loss of physical bodily regulation.
And of course, physical illnesses, chronic heart disease, chronic pain syndromes. These aren't just body problems, they are inextricably linked to the brain's failure to properly route visceromotor signals through the rich club hubs.
It really forces a total reckoning in how we treat disease. You cannot effectively treat a mental illness without addressing the physiological energy budget.
And you cannot treat chronic physical pain without addressing the cognitive networks that map it. So what does this all mean for how we treat disease going forward?
Well, this raises an important question regarding future research. As revolutionary as this map is, science is an ongoing process. The researchers noted several critical limitations that need to be addressed.
What's next on the frontier?
For example, they lacked heartbeat, evoked potential monitoring. While they captured the brain networks beautifully, they didn't directly correlate those fMRI scans with simultaneous electrical readouts from the heart.
Oh, interesting. They also mentioned the complication of sleep and wakefulness states, right?
Yes. The participants were in the scanner for 30 minutes of resting state imaging. We all know how easy it is to doze off in a dark, humming tube.
Definitely.
Network connectivity shifts dramatically depending on whether you are highly alert or drifting into sleep. And they couldn't perfectly control for those micro-fluctuations in wakefulness.
Are there any regions left to map?
Yes. Furthermore, even with the incredible powers of 7 Tesla magnet, the brain is vastly complex. They pointed out the need to deeply investigate the septal nuclei, which are heavily involved in the timing and rhythm of these networks.
Okay.
There is also the area postrema, a fascinating structure in the brainstem. It is a circumventricular organ, meaning it actually has a permeable blood-brain barrier.
Wait, so it can literally taste the blood?
Exactly. It can taste the chemical makeup of the blood directly, giving it unique interoceptive access that needs to be mapped. And of course, the cerebellum.
Right, which has so many neurons.
More than half the neurons in the brain. It's heavily involved in allostatic regulation, but wasn't the primary focus of this specific cortical-subcortical mapping.
It is genuinely thrilling to realize how much we have discovered and yet how much terrain is still out there waiting for a stronger lens.
It's just the beginning.
We started today by questioning a simple gut instinct, and we've ended up tracing a 7 Tesla map of human existence. We explored how the brain acts as a predictive smart thermostat, constantly budgeting our energy. We descended into the brainstem engine room, discovered that our visual perception is gated by our stomach, and realized that the elite, rich club hubs in our cortex shatter the illusion of a separate mind and body.
Your thoughts, your immune system, and your heartbeat are all singing in the exact same choir.
It is a profound shift in how we understand our own humanity.
It is. And as we wrap up, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, one that builds on everything we've uncovered about this predictive energy budget.
Lay it on us.
Our allostatic machinery evolved over millions of years to anticipate acute physical demands. Running from a predator, surviving a winter storm, fighting off an infection. It is an ancient system designed for physical survival. So how does this ancient predictive engine handle the modern world? Think about the unpredictable, constant ping of a 24/7 digital notification on your smartphone, an email from a boss late at night, or a stressful news alert.
Oh, wow.
Does that constant, low-level unpredictability hijack our interoceptive networks? Are we forcing our allostatic systems to endlessly prepare for life or death physiological emergencies that never actually arrive physically? Are we burning out our metabolic budgets on digital false alarms?
That is a brilliant and honestly a slightly terrifying question to end on. Are our ancient smart thermostats burning out the furnace because of our modern smartphones? We would absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this. Take a moment, tune into your own interoceptive feedback, feel that heartbeat, and let us know what you think. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we will catch you on the next deep dive. And remember, the next time your heart races before a meeting, it isn't just anxiety. It is your magnificent brain doing the math, trying to give you the exact energy it thinks you need to survive.